We're heading back to New York, where the president is about to address a media briefing following his engagements at the United Nations General Assembly this week.
To come and present our G20 story, particularly to outline, as we did this morning, to the foreign ministers what we aim to achieve out of our G20 presidency. And we also expatiated on our theme of equality, solidarity, and sustainability, which underpins all the other priorities that we are hoping to reach consensus on. We explained that thus far our whole process of chairing the G20 has been going very well. We've already held 100 of the 130 meetings that are given rise to by being president of the G20. And consensus is being reached in a number of areas as meetings are being held at ministerial level, at head of department level. We have a sense that we are cascading towards reaching a measure of consensus on the overall declaration that the leaders should be able to sign up to. And already we've got and received a great deal of support from various countries and institutions, and the United Nations has been the lead institution in giving South Africa the support. They've been assisting us with the various seminars and workshops and meetings that have been held. And even those countries that were initially a bit reluctant in joining in this process have been gravitating more and more towards participating. So already we've got good indications that we will have a good G20, and the outcomes would be the type that will speak to our objectives. We've also been able to explain to all and sundry, and especially the foreign ministers this morning, that we've added another aspect which we believe can be a legacy type of process in relation to dealing with inequality. We've asked Professor Joseph Stiglitz, a Nobel laureate, to head the committee that is going to look at inequality globally, South Africa being the repository of inequality, being the most unequal country in the world, which was bequeathed to us by colonialism and apartheid. We felt it duty-bound that we should uplift the issue of inequality so that the world can reflect on how inequality has driven the poverty that exists in the world and has also driven the unemployment that we are suffering from. So that in itself is something that is new, and we would like to see that expert committee continuing with its work and in a way institutionalize the issue of dealing with inequality in the world. As our journey has been more focused on the UN, we have on the sidelines held a number of bilaterals with other world leaders. Various countries have had discussions with us, be they Finland, be they Ukraine, be they Sri Lanka, and a number of others, France as well. We've had good discussions on a bilateral level. One of the highlights, of course, of being here has also been to join other countries. I would say 142 countries that have now stepped up to recognize the state of Palestine and to advocate for a two-state solution. That was a development which really, truly warmed our hearts as South Africa, as we have in some ways been in the forefront of seeking to lessen the burden and the hardships that the Palestinians have been living under, particularly in Gaza. So our trip this time has been quite impactful. We've also had occasion to meet private sector people. Last night we held a South African and US chamber dinner where I addressed them and dealt with the issues that we believe are important between South Africa and the United States, and how we are hoping that AGOA will be extended, and called on U.S. businesses to support the call for AGOA to be extended. And we also got a good briefing from the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition on the process that he and his colleagues have been involved in, also an official from the presidency, in trying to reach agreement with the United States. And now we've now entered the era or the phase of formal negotiations to the United States, and we're hoping that that will lead to a good end. The private sector entities that we've met have been very, very positive towards South Africa, very keen and willing to support, and we ended up with meeting BlackRock, which is the largest asset manager in the world, and they are gung-ho on South Africa. They recognize the various reforms that we've embarked upon, and they want to remain connected and invested in South Africa. So all in all, this has been a very good tour to the United Nations. It's been very busy, and your presence here makes it a lot busier as well. So I hope you'll make it less busy now.
Thank you very much, President. I guess we'll just start with that role. So we'll start with Sherwin, Victoria, BBC, and we'll end up with the rest. So
Thank you, Vincent. I have two to start with, Mr. President, and hopefully there'll be a second round for a third. You met bilaterally with President Zelensky of Ukraine this week. Of course, President Zelensky stood before the UN General Assembly this week and complained about the ineffectiveness of UN institutions and international institutions writ large in stopping Russia's aggression against his country. You've met bilaterally with him. What levers of pressure has he asked you to bring to bear on the Russian Federation? What did he ask you to do in terms of South Africa's role in bringing this war to a conclusion? And then secondly, on trade, your Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Park Stow, talked about being cautiously optimistic about a trade deal with the United States. You then overruled that and said you were immensely optimistic about a future trade deal with the United States. So I wonder, Mr. President, how would you characterize South Africa's bilateral relationship with the United States today, some 4 months since the lights were dimmed in the Oval Office?
Our relations to the United States obviously has a number of pillars. Trade is one pillar, diplomacy is another pillar, and of course the social dealings amongst our people is another important pillar. And our own history is another pillar of dealing with the issues, and the way the United States also supported in one form or another our own struggle. I do believe that we have over time, even since the lights were dimmed in the White House, been having informal exchanges with the United States government, with a number of our officials, exchanging views and thoughts, and even going into the White House and talking to people in the United States various departments. We've now entered, as I said earlier, the phase of more formalized negotiations based on a text that we've received from them, which we're now going to respond to. And that to us is encouraging. It basically means that we're not just talking. We're now more focused, basing everything we talk about on text. And which should lead to some measure of finality. And obviously, we want the tariffs either to be removed or to be reduced. That is our strategic objective. But we also want to deal with all the other issues that have to do with trade and how we facilitate trade between the two countries and how we also facilitate investments. We would like to see more investments from the United States into South Africa, and similarly, they would like to see investments from South Africa into the United States, and how we also remove the various barriers, because there are not only trade barriers, there are a number of, or tariff barriers, there are quite a number of other barriers. So all that is going to be brought into the mix, and we will be having very, I would say, fruitful discussions. So I remain quite optimistic about those talks. And obviously, Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, because he's much closer to the rock face, has to be cautiously optimistic. I am more gung-ho, and I do believe that a lot can be achieved. With regard to Ukraine and our meeting with President Zelensky, we've met President Zelensky on a number of occasions, and a very good rapport has developed between us, and there is now acceptance of the role that South Africa is able to play even in complex situations like this, where there are two warring parties, and indeed where there are other parties as well who are part of this. He recognizes that we are able, more than many other countries, to talk to President Putin, and President Putin also recognizes that we are able to talk to President Zelensky, and in that way we are seen as an honest broker, because we are transparent to them about what we discuss, and they have become convinced, I would say, that we don't take any sides. All we want is that there should be negotiations that lead to peace. So his ask was, could you continue urging on the Russian side that there should be negotiations? And he stresses that these would be negotiations without any preconditions. When we first met President Zelensky here at the UN last year, he had a number of preconditions. And we sought to talk him out of insisting on the preconditions. And we did so by giving him the example of our own negotiation process. And we said, when Nelson Mandela and the apartheid rulers started talking, they did not have any preconditions. And that was, in our view, a very important principle, which we also imparted to him. We're now glad that he no longer insists on preconditions, which means that somehow what we have shared with him has sort of had a little bit of an influence, and he now is ready for negotiations without any preconditions, and urges us to put the same message across to President Putin, which we will, and which we continue to. So our role in this whole drama is to try and see how best we can get the parties to talk and to negotiate. And we've even offered that should they find the need for a venue, South Africa is well known as a venue that can be utilized. Many other conflicts were well resolved because people came to South Africa. Maybe it has to do with the water in South Africa or the air in South Africa. Once you get there, you want to settle. So we've said, come to South Africa and we will offer you the beautiful air and the scenario, the scenes and the water. So we've offered that South Africa is willing and ready to be the venue where they can meet and negotiate.
Thank you.
Mr. President, so at the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting this morning, the US Undersecretary of State said that the US would champion a back-to-basics approach when it takes over for their presidency next year. This would include things like no diversity, equity, or gender-inclusive responsive budgeting. Are you concerned that the US will disregard all of the progress that South Africa has made, the gains that South Africa has made during its presidency?
No, I am not concerned that they will, reverse the gains. I think the concept of inclusivity, equity, and diversity has become a global movement, as it were. I mean, many in the globe now realize that if we are to deal with the challenges that we face in the world, we've got to work together. So inclusivity is about how we find ways of working together without having one dictating what should happen. It speaks to a multipolar world rather than a unipolar world. It is about inclusivity. Include everyone in seeking solutions for the challenges and the problems. And the issue of equity or equality should be the order of the day. There should be equality between men and women. There should be equality of treatment and respect and dignity between nations. For me, it's the done thing. It should be the done thing. It should never be, we don't want to be equal to you, because that smacks of, I would say, arrogance, that smacks of paternalism. The world more and more is embracing equality. And when one thinks about it, about equality amongst races, people of different cultures, different skin color, and different genders, what can be wrong with that? In my book, there clearly is nothing wrong. We are all human beings. So it's a call for people to be treated on an equal basis. And we as South Africans say this advisedly because as a nation we suffered under the brand and the horror of unequal treatment. So we advocate for this from our own experience, from our own knowledge. And the issue of diversity and, if you like, solidarity, we do believe that the strong must help the weak. The powerful must help the weak. And the rich must also help the poor, and so that we bring everyone up. And the notion of leaving no one behind is very important in life, as it is used also in war. When your fellow soldier is wounded, you don't want to leave them behind. You hold them and take them along. And in life, it should also be like that, that we should leave no one behind. We move together to development, to advancement, to progress. Those are the basics of how humanity should progress. That, to me, is back to basics. The rest is being an outlier that completely goes against how humanity is progressing in life.
Mr. President, Wahige Mwaura here from BBC News, taking you back to trade now. What specific leverage would you say South Africa has at this time that you hope, that you base your optimism on, that could get the United States to reduce that tariff on your country? Are you seeing that relations have softened? Is it because President Trump's advisors may have changed in the recent time? What specifically would you say that is? My first question. My second one is, what's your response, or what do you think the impact will be of the announcement that Taiwan will be restricting semiconductor exports to your country? And do you see that approach as them borrowing from the United States' new trade approach? Could that be what may have influenced them to take this bold step?
On the question of Taiwan, I do believe that the statement they issued has been retracted, where they threatened that they would be lessening or withdrawing offering or exports on the semiconductors or microchips. But even so, we think it is an ineffectual threat, because they are not the only ones who are supplying these semiconductors or microchips. There are quite a number of other countries, and other countries are actually going up the ladder, and as far as that is concerned. So I would urge them that it's best that we find ways of negotiating or talking about this rather than issue threats against one another. On the issue of leverage, what leverage would we have? And I would say that the best leverage we have is that fair trade between the two countries. That is the best outcome. That the trade between the United States and South Africa should be done on the basis of mutual respect. We have things we have to sell to them, and they have things they have to sell to us as well. And we've got products that they don't have. We've got critical minerals that they need from us, and therefore we would like the discussions and the treatment of each other's trade relations to be based on what it is that we have to offer. And our approach is mutual benefit rather than a one-way benefit. We want to benefit the United States as much as we want them to benefit us, so that the outcome of any trade relations should be so well balanced. And indeed, where there's a deficit, we should be able to have a discussion on how best we reduce that deficit rather than use draconian means such as punitive tariffs to try and gain one advantage over another. So our view is that the best leverage we have on each other is that we should have fair trade and fair treatment. That's the best way.
We'll come to Arise.
Okay. Good afternoon.
Sorry,
Do
I have
you
one.
want
I'm just
another
sharing the
question
mic
from the
very
BBC?
quickly.
Okay.
Yes, another question, please.
Sure.
Sorry.
I can help you.
Sorry. Mr. President, you said when negotiating, what's on the table is trade, diplomacy, and people. On that more social aspect, have you been asked, or would you accept to take a migration deal like Eswatini has? And my second question is, have you heard from the Africans, refugees? Are they settled all right?
Whilst you're here in the US.
Actually, no, I haven't heard anything from the Afrikaners who are here, and I haven't met them. Actually, I would have wanted to hear from them, their fellow South Africans. No, I haven't heard from them. We have not been asked to take in any either the refugees or prisoners, and our approach would be why would it be necessary for us to accede to such a request? We're just a small country, a tiny little country compared to the United States. They have the huge land, the facilities, and the power and everything else. So we're fortunate we haven't been asked. And if we were to be asked, we would obviously want to understand what the rationale is and be able to have a serious discussion with them. But I guess we're dealing with much other bigger things between the two of us. Yeah.
Arise.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. I'm Adeswaki Osage from Arise News in Nigeria. And I want to ask, because you've spoken about the ineffectiveness of the UN Security Council. However, a lot of African nations are vying for a seat on the council, but you said it is in its current form. Do you believe that African nations coming would change the form of the UN Security Council? And also, do you back the call that no country should have a veto power on the UN Security Council?
We do agree that no country should have a veto power. The veto power that those 5 countries have has debilitated the UN from being able to be effective, because when everyone else agrees, including the General Assembly, one country can just veto everything. So we back to where we started, even with very reasonable steps that need to be taken to resolve the problems of the world. We believe that consensus needs to be built. And there are ways of building consensus, and there are ways of persuading one another and seeing how best solutions can be solved. We were able as a country to reach consensus to solve one of the most difficult problems that the world has ever faced, racial discrimination and apartheid. And we did it by building consensus and doing the best for the people of South Africa. So I do believe that that's the way we should do it. And of course, expanding the United Nations Security Council should mean that the various blocks and parts of the world need to be represented. Africa is not represented. Latin America is not represented. And that is hugely unfair for various parts of the world that has large populations not feeling represented. If they are represented, there will be more inclusion, there will be more effectiveness in taking decisions, and many other regions of the world will feel that they can own the decisions that will have been taken, which will have been reached on the basis of consensus. Because that in itself speaks to respect for one another, speaks to respecting and recognizing the sovereignty of nations, and it speaks to the issue of equality as well. Other nations should never feel that they are more equal than others, which is precisely what we now have in the current equation of the structure of the United Nations Security Council.
Okay, Sharon, do you want to wrap up with your last question?
So two last ones, Mr. President. One also on domestic. Let me just start with the G20. Solidarity, equity and sustainability, right, is the theme of South Africa's G20 presidency. And you will agree that climate change and addressing climate change and climate justice are very key pegs of that theme. You will have also heard President Donald Trump stand before the UN General Assembly this week, calling renewables a scam, calling climate change the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world. I wonder how you navigate the US administration's stance on climate change within the context of the G20 and the work you're seeking to achieve in that regard. And then on the domestic, I just got a question from Johannesburg, a question about John Steenhuisen seeking to possibly reshuffle DA members within the cabinet and within the GNU. I wonder if you have any thoughts on a possible change in the guard within the DA's contribution to your government.
Well, on the issue of climate change, we've noted with a measure of concern, of course, the views that President Donald Trump puts forward on the notion that he has that climate change is a hoax, it's a scam, and all renewable energy processes are ineffectual. We would want to have thoroughgoing discussions with him on that, because in many ways, I guess, some of us in various parts of the world actually see the effects of climate change. We see how the climate of the world has changed, and we see the impacts on our own countries, on the lives of ordinary people. Africa particularly has played no real role in the changing of the climate to a point where it begins to manifest in the way itself in the way that it does, negatively affecting us, and we are bearing the greatest brunt of it. And I would therefore want to have thoroughgoing discussions with him on that and demonstrate that this is the reality of our lives, and we ascribe it to climate change. We see no other cause of what is happening with the floods, with the droughts and with the fires, other than ascribe it to climate change. Scientifically, it's been confirmed to be the case. I set up a presidential commission on climate change, and the scientists and the various business people have confirmed that climate change is a reality. It exists, and it needs to be confronted. It needs to be addressed. So within the context of the G20, we are hoping that obviously the preponderance of view and ideas are saying that climate change has to be addressed. We need to take various steps and measures to address climate change and to finance climate change and to lessen the impacts of climate change. Thus far, I do believe that we have seen those effects, and it is gaining traction. On the domestic issue that you raised, of course, the DA is a participant in the government of national unity. They have deployed a number of ministers and deputy ministers, and in the end, if they have to change any minister or deputy minister, they have to come to me, and I have to agree, because in the end, as president, I'm the one who appoints ministers and deputy ministers. So I have the last word.
And I think we have our headline. Thank you.
Okay, just I'm mindful of time, guys.
Just one on
We need to
Gaza.
vacate this room, so one and then we'll wrap up. Okay, Victoria, you go.
Just one on Gaza, sir. The genocide in Gaza was obviously a big discussion of
Yes.
the UNGA this week with the conference on the two-state solution, and we also saw a number of Western countries recognizing Palestinian statehood. But aside from all this talk, what can be done to end the war in Gaza urgently, and how does it feel that the ICJ's orders have been persistently ignored?
It is a matter of concern to us that the state of Israel, aided and abetted by other governments, have just completely ignored the rulings of the International Court of Justice. The very countries that talk about adherence to the rule of law are the ones who are actually trashing the notion of the rule of law, who are disregarding the rule of law. And if countries and members of the UN do that, what else is left? Because we're just really shredding and tearing to pieces the values and the principles that we should all be standing for. So we are concerned. On South Africa's side, we will continue our charge that there should be a ceasefire, and we are hoping that the International Court of Justice in its rulings will declare such. And much as they may be ignored, in the end, it is very much like what the apartheid government did. It was resolution after resolution after resolution that came to the United Nations, but in the end, the chickens did come home to roost. The apartheid system had to come to an end, and even the atrocities that are being committed in Gaza will and must come to an end. the coalition that is now building against what Israel is doing and in favor of finding a solution, particularly a two-state solution and calling for a ceasefire, will gain traction and it will become a reality. And history will judge them very harshly. The legacy that they leave for their children and grandchildren is going to be a heavy and a very negative legacy.
What lessons or regrets would you say you have regarding South Africa's interventions in the conflict in Eastern DRC? And on that same note, as you offer South Africa today as a possible location for mediation for conflicts around the world, is it still open regarding the situation there? The DRC president saying the conflict is still raging. Or do you trust that the interventions by Washington and Doha are sufficient, that they will bring peace to Eastern DRC?
South Africa became part of the peacemaking process in the DRC from 2 points of view. The first one was as we were invited to be part of the United Nations mission, which is called MINUSCO. And we were there for a number of years as the United Nations was seeking to install peace in that eastern part of the DRC. We were dedicated, we were faithful in trying to protect the lives of the people, ordinary people in the Eastern DRC, and to bring about a situation of peace. That did prevail for quite a while. And as there was escalation, particularly of the negative forces, the SADC, Southern African Development Community, then decided that we needed to take a defensive approach in the interests of the people of the DRC. It was then that semi-DRC mission was put together. So it was not South Africa's decision, it was the decision of SADC, which we are a member of. And the countries, various countries in Southern Africa agreed that there should be such a mission. And the countries that then moved forward to participate and contribute soldiers was South Africa, Malawi, and Tanzania. So collectively, we put together, if you like, brigades to support the peace effort in the Eastern DRC. The decision to withdraw was what we call a confidence-building measure. We decided that it is important that all armies should withdraw from the Eastern DRC. And we were very determined to demonstrate that we did not go there to wage war. We went there on a mission of SADC to protect the people of the Eastern DRC. And as the peace process was now unfolding, we needed confidence-building measures. And one of those was a withdrawal from that theater, the war theater, and we've withdrawn. And our withdrawal was also based on understanding that all parties that are not Congolese would withdraw. And I've heard President Tshisekedi complaining that Rwanda has not withdrawn. And that is a matter of concern, because all negative forces, all other forces that are there should be withdrawing to allow the Congolese themselves to work together with all other parties to build a peace process. It's so important that the Congolese themselves, be they M23, be they the Defense Force of the DRC, should themselves, aided and abetted by various other agencies, including peace processes, participate in building peace. And that's what we felt we should do, to withdraw. And therefore, we believe that all others should withdraw and leave the Congolese themselves to build peace.
Are you confident about the processes ongoing now? Do you feel they will bring peace?
There are a number of processes, and I think we should never lose confidence. We should never lose hope. Peace building is an arduous task. It takes time, it takes effort, and we should never discount any process that is meant to build peace. So we should embrace all peacemaking processes, and I remain hopeful, immensely hopeful, that we will be able to build peace in the Eastern DRC.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Colleagues,
Thank you so much.
To end our media session. Mr. President, you will take leave.
All right, President Cyril Ramaphosa, they're wrapping up his 4-day visit to the United Nations and speaking about the issues around the G20, saying that they're going to have a legacy project post the G20 summit later this year. Remember, South Africa is chairing the G20 there, the presidency, and saying that they are going to be looking at the issues of inequality globally. And this is going to be a legacy project, also having had bilaterals with other countries. But you saw Sherwin there, he will be wrapping that for you.